Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. So, very excited that I finished something that has been long on my list, that you've seen for a long time, but it comes at a price. So let's talk about it, and I'll talk about all the other books that I have been kind of knocking out in my net galley busting march. So my book I finished was Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time, Volume 2, In the Shadow of Young Girls in Flower. And I always forget to mention, but James Grieve is the translator of this edition. So let's talk about this book. So this is the second volume. I've been reading this with Leo of A Little Book Life. The cost that I made mention of is Leo and I had to have a chat because we were both dragging our feet in returning to this book. It was one of those things where there was something in the kind of in the middle section where it, like the middle, I would say in the middle third, that was just grinding us. And I know what it is. It's the fact that this narrator in this volume is a teenager. And so you've got all that teen emo drama energy, and it's tiresome. I don't care whether it's fin de siècle Paris or if it's modern day, it's exhausting. So, and eye-rolling, even if it's beautifully written. So I asked Leo, what about instead of our 20 pages a day, because we weren't finding a ton of things to talk about in these 20 pages. It was just like the fact that we were taking it very slowly. And he said, yeah, let's do that. And then he's like, you know what? I just don't think, I don't care anymore. So one of the things, if you do a buddy read with somebody, you have to honor that someone may not be willing to continue a ride that you want to continue on. So I told him no harm, no foul. There's no way I want to create a reading slump in somebody or force them to read on further. Though I was so sad that he left because it just started getting good, I would say about 40 pages after he bailed. And I kept trying to tease him back in. But, you know, sometimes when a book's dead to you, it's dead. You know, done, period. So, but let's talk about this book. So in this, as I mentioned, volume 2 is his teen years. We open the book and he and his family are in Paris, and he is forming a friendship relationship with this young girl that he saw in volume 1, who is the daughter of his father, his family's friend, Swan. And Swan in volume 1 had this outlandish affair with a coquette and was completely immersed in her life. In volume 2, we find them married. In volume 1, we really had 2 sections of the book. The first one were his years or the times that he spent in his grandparents' home in Cambrai. And in Cambrai, it's just, life is just quiet and simple, and it's like those summer languorous days. And so the writing is very slow and very beautiful and very nuanced and with a lot of subtlety and long sentences to get to the point. And so you just kind of go along, and it becomes like this river ride that you take. Not really knowing if there's a direction. You're just observing and there. Then the second part of the book is Swan in Love. And Swan in Love, we follow one of the characters. It's one of the first times that we deviate from the point of view and of our narrator, this young child, or this man reminiscing about his childhood. We kind of go into Swan's story, and his story is about his love of this woman named Odette, who is a coquette. And he didn't know that she was a coquette. But really, come on now. But it's all about the society in Paris at that time. It's the turn of the century from 1800s to 1900s. And there's just a lot of things happening. and a lot of hierarchy and class and all the games that people play in order to rise through the ranks and get close to the nobility, but the nobility is kind of on the wane, like all of these things. So we start this book with him back in Paris with his family. Now he's a little older, he's a teenager. He really wants to be a writer, and he's precocious, and he's telling everyone he wants to be a writer. And he finds out that Swan and Odette are in Paris with their daughter. Well, he runs into and sees the daughter at the park and instantly falls in love with her. This is something that happens to him over and over and over again. This is part of the themes of love and expectation versus reality, and all of the masks that we assume people have, and the assumptions that we put on them when we first see them, and how that shapes what we expect from them. So the first part is befriending Joubert, their little girl, and trying to win a way into her heart through a relationship with her parents, because he already knows Swan from early days in Cambrai, and he's a family friend. Now the family has pushed him aside because he married Odette, right? And so he has to kind of worm his way in, because it's not like his family is going to visit their family and he has entree. So that's the early part. And it's, it's kind of funny because all the things that he does in the faux pas, and also the observations of how Swan is now with Odette now that she's his wife. And Odette as a character is fascinating. She is just, I love anytime they talk about her outfits and her decorating tastes and what she's trying to do and how she's trying to establish herself. I love it. I'm here for it. Well, he recognizes that the more he tries to get close to Joubert, the more she pulls away. Typical, right? And so he tries to stop. He tries to pull one of these, like, well, I'm just going to cut this off. And he breaks up with her, even though she doesn't know that she's being broken up with, to see if she recognizes that he's missing. And does she come running for him? Well, she doesn't. And it becomes this thing, because he's morose and obnoxious and kind of hanging his head low everywhere. So the family decides that he needs to get out of town, and he would do well from a trip to the seaside town of Baalbek. Now we need to know that the narrator is an asthmatic, and so he has a lot of health challenges and a lot of difficulties. I don't think we appreciate that enough in modern day, how difficult the life of that asthmatic would be during those times. Number one, you've got the air. The air quality has got to be really bad with the onset of industrialization. Then it's not like they have inhalers that they can take, this modern medicine to open the air passages and let people breathe. So there are a lot of things that he cannot do because of being an asthmatic. So going to the seaside, getting the fresh air, getting the sea air is something that's supposed to be really good. So he's going with his grandmother and Francoise, our favorite, hilarious maid, kind of servant to the family who kind of helps them with everything. And so they set off on this train ride. And at first, we also get almost shades of Cambrai, where it's languorous. It's really long days filled with not a lot of things happening. They're staying at this grand hotel. And so there's some interesting people that are coming in and out, and he's kind of observing. He's on holiday, but in a really sleepy seaside town. One of his grandmother's old friends is a marquise, and she happens to be staying there. And there's this hilarious scenes where they're pretending not to see each other because the time to talk is not really appropriate, or you're not really sure if they want to see each other and recognize each other and be stuck here at this grand hotel making conversation. But there's one point where they just had to, where they were literally like face to face, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, look at you. It's so funny. Well, they ended up reconnecting, and their friendship ends up being built up. Now he is a snob. And so he is very excited to meet her because she's of nobility, and he can get entree into noble ranks. He literally thinks about this kind of stuff all the time. And he ends up like tagging along with these two old ladies in all their adventures, like going out on carriage rides and going and visiting a church and all of these kinds of things. Well, his grandmother and he get dumped when the Marquise's nephew is coming because she wants to spend time with him, and he's a baron. So of course, that our narrator just immediately envisions in his mind that they're going to be best friends, and this is his chance. And he meets him in the most hilarious ways. And the guy won't make eye contact with him. Even as he's being introduced, he won't make eye contact. And then all of a sudden he holds out his hand, but he holds out it so far away from his body that it's almost an affront. And everyone's just like, what is going on with this guy? Just as this part is starting to really kick in is when right before this is when Leo dropped. And I was like, no, you have to come back. There's this hilarious scene. Now young people are coming into this town. But then the kicker happened. He's walking down the promenade, the esplanade next to the ocean, and he runs into a girl gang. A gang of young girls his age, and they are just loud and they're wild and they're all athletic. And they're running back and forth. One leaps over from these steps, leaps over old man who was sitting on a chair and shouts something. And they're just out of control. And he is obsessed with these 4 to 5 young girls. Who are they? Why hasn't he seen them before? Do they live here? Are they on holiday? What's going on? And so that is our introduction to Albertine, who becomes one of the pivotal characters who are going to move forward in the next 6-7 volumes that we still, so four left. So and then I was desperate. I was like, Leo, there's girl gangs. You have to come back. And he's like, nope, dead. So I finished this book, and it finished on a really great high. Proust is a difficult read. It's a challenging read. You have to you have to submit. You have to just submit and let him take you on that ride. You're on that raft and you don't have a paddle. So you just float and see where it takes you. If it's someplace that's interesting to you, if you enjoy the sights along the way, then it's so worth it. What I find is I'm less interested in the bitchy, backstabby kind of society things as I am in his musings on nature, in his musings on art, in his musings of like travel, and as he's coming to a place and how he describes those types of things in these adventures that the narrator's having. He's insufferable. The narrator is insufferable. So know that going into it. But I will be continuing on with the next volume. So I know this was like the longest wrap up of this, but I just needed to do it and get it over with. So volume 2 done. So happy. Now let's get to my NetGalley busting. I continued on with that. Let me talk about The Plotters. This is by Unsu Kim, translated by Sora Kim Russell. Oh, this was so interesting. This is like this very stylized, very cool literary noir set in Seoul. And it's modern day, but it almost feels dystopian a little bit. We have our main character is an assassin, and we open with him looking through the scope at his target, an old man with a dog. He deviates from his normal mode of being and does something so different, and it has ripple effect types of things. And this is someone who doesn't like to think very much about what he's doing. He likes to get his job, and he likes to do it. But he suffers deeply and doesn't want any introspection on what and why he does what he does. In the times when he doesn't have a job, he just kind of gets drunk all day, just kind of dull the memories of what's happened or the implications. His world turns upside down because of this deviation from the plan. And he starts to notice and starts to recognize that the plotters, who are the people who put the plan together. So there's the person, so it's a hierarchy in this assassination world. There's the person who pays for the hit to happen. There's the person who is their connection, who approves it. Then there's the plotter, and that plotter is the one who does the logistics and figures out which assassin and where and how and all of that, puts out the plan together and then farms it out to the assassin to do the hit. Well, the plotters start to revolt, and so assassins are starting to get killed. And so what's happening? There are some women behind the scenes that are playing pivotal roles in this very, very male-dominated type of environment. This was really dark. It was very violent, but it was also really witty, very smartly constructed, I just found it incredibly interesting, and I loved some of those twists. I gave no spoilers here. That's kind of part of what you read in the synopsis. But the construction and everything was really well done. If you like really smart, kind of cool remove in your mysteries and thrillers, this might be one for you. Then I read number 4 of the Phryne Fisher series by Kerry Greenwood. This is Death at Victoria Dock. Kerry Greenwood is fantastic for aussieapril because she is an Australian writer, and this is set in Melbourne. Just so much fun. With a Phryne Fisher book, this is my second. For aussieapril, I'm going to go back and read the first one, Cocaine Blues. In these books and in this series, what you can expect to find is an incredibly smart, witty, intelligent, bold, ballsy gal named Phryne Fisher. She is independently wealthy and is titled, but she is very independent, does what she wants, lives by her own rules, but has a huge heart and has a whole cast of characters around her who help her and support her. And she also does that so in kind. This one was set on the docks of Melbourne, and anarchists, bank robbers, Latvians, Latvian gangs, and of course, a very handsome man with an anarchist symbol tattoo on him. And so she actually has a visit to a tattoo parlor. It's just hilarious. Absolutely so fun, so wild, exuberant. But you can tell that Kerry Greenwood puts a lot of research into things. And so she really understood and really kind of thoughtfully approaches the material that she chooses to kind of set this scene up in. So I just enjoyed it very, very much. It might be my new favorite series for sure. Then here's a surprise. I didn't really love the first one, but I've come to appreciate this series much, much more. This is Karolina and the Torn Curtain by Maryla Szymiczkova. I found out through doing some research for this book, that Maryla Szymiczkova is actually a pseudonym for a gay couple, 2 men who are writing this together. And so they're a gay literary couple. One of the gentlemen is Jacek Denel, and he is a poet and a writer. And then Peter Tarczynski is his husband, and he is a translator, and they write this together. And one of the reasons they wanted to write this is set in Poland, and it's written originally in Polish, is because they are very, very concerned with women's rights and what's happening with women. And so by setting this in Krakow, 1890s into the turn of the century, he has this character, this really interesting character, Sophia, who is social climbing and really haughty and hilarious, absolutely hilarious. But we slowly watch her kind of become awakened to some realities of the world. She thinks she's firm in her positions, but she's getting challenged by them in interesting ways. So she's having a very, very slow political awakening. And it starts off with the murder of one of her housekeepers, Karolina. Karolina is murdered, and she has to kind of help as a witness and a character witness, kind of support the police as they figure out what happened. And she starts to recognize that things are not as they seem in this investigation. And meanwhile, in the backdrop, her husband is a professor, university professor, which she loves to talk about all the time, because that gives her status in the community. And she's feeling affronted because the women are demanding to be educated, and they have been allowed by law now to attend university, but they're only in audit form, so they're not allowed to get any grades, and they have to get approval by each professor. But all of a sudden, women are showing up in the university and in the classes, and what is that? The ripple effects that has, and she's not for it, even though she's a very smart woman. And so you see those internal challenges that are going to start to really rise up. This one just had a ton of interesting things. It had human trafficking, it had prostitution, and she's like right in the middle, like trying to figure all this out and having to go into all these places. And it's funny, interesting, and thought-provoking. I really enjoyed this one, much better, like I said, than the first one. So I will continue on with this. So those were 3 NetGalleys that I had that now checked off the list. I'm quite proud of myself for that. Okay, so let's talk about what I'm reading now. I need to get through this quickly. This is The Return. This is Hisham Matar, Father, Sons, and the Land in Between. This is so emotional and so difficult to read. This is the true story of Hisham Matar, whose father was militant against the Gaddafi regime in Libya. I was reading this for the Invisible Cities Project, and his father was kidnapped and taken and assumed to be killed in prison, either died or killed. They have no idea. They've never seen the body. There's no death verification or anything. But it's the first time that he, his mother, wife, and brother are going back to Libya since he was a small child. Many years after the Gaddafi rule is over and it's safe for them to go back, reuniting with family, hearing the stories, and it's powerful. Then I am a fourth of the way through The Shadow King by Maaza Mengiste. This is very interesting. This is part of my In Real Life book club, and we're reading this because we're reading the Booker shortlist. This is set in Ethiopia, and we open with a young girl, Hirut, and she is the war is starting. We have Mussolini, whose factions have just entered into the country. A family that she's with, the husband, is leading a faction who are in the hills, and they're going to fight. So it's starting to ratchet up. It's very tense. You could tell bad things are going to happen. Beautifully written. It's a lot denser than I expected. Expected to kind of fly through it, but it's so far very well written. Then I'm starting a new project. This is with Elizabeth of Bookish North, and we are going to read all of Virginia Woolf's novels together. We're starting with The Voyage Out. So we expect to see Virginia Woolf for the rest of the year because we mapped it out, and by December we'll have finished all of her fiction works. So delighted to start this with her. And so even though Leo and I will not be continuing on with my Proust project, we'll still have our Bruckner project, and we do buddy reads throughout anyway. But I'm going to be continuing slowly but surely. This is In Search of Lost Time, Volume 3. This is the Guermantes Way, translated by Mark Treharne. So expect to see that. So that's it. The only other thing I wanted to make mention of is that Russell from Ink and Paper blog and Ryan of Read by Ryan, he's on Bookstagram, not on BookTube. They do the Spilling Tea book club. So they're going to be talking about Hotel de Lac next week, which is delightful. So I wanted to draw your attention to first the Spilling Tea book club because it's amazing. And you can join. I'll put information below. But also they're going to be moderators at the Newburyport Book Festival. And I'll put information below. I think it's going to be really, really great. I'm so happy for them, so excited to see them acting as moderators in conversation with authors. And it's all free. So you can join via Zoom. If you've never had a chance to go to a literary festival like this will be a perfect opportunity. I'll have all those links down below. Other than that, that's it for now. Please, 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 we are still in a global pandemic. Maintain safe social distance, wear 2 masks, wash your hands and don't touch your face. And pretty soon we'll be done with this nonsense. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.